Comes to contentious and politically divisive movies, One Battle After Another might just have taken the top spot for the entire year. Depending on who you talk to, it's either the greatest cinematic triumph of the past 2 decades, on par with Sicario, Gangs of New York and No Country for Old Men, or a pretentious, morally bankrupt Hollywood circle jerk that glorifies domestic terrorism and is more interested in taking shots at the current administration than crafting a compelling story. And in the middle of this cultural maelstrom is little old me, who's left with the job of setting aside what this movie represents and focusing instead on what it actually is. And I'm sorry to say that what it is a frustrating mixture of superb acting and directing talent desperately trying to elevate a script that doesn't really deserve either. A movie that's too long, too sluggish, too self-important, and too wrapped up in its own messaging to keep me invested. The kind of film where I struggle to care about any of the characters because there's such a bunch of useless, irritating fuck-ups that I began to wonder who the good guys were even supposed to be. Anyway, unlike this movie, which drags on for nearly 3 excruciating hours, I'm gonna try and get this review over with quickly.
I never watched
on
the movie,
to the plot summary. The movie begins with Pat and Perfidia, and yes, that's apparently her real name.
Right.
Who are members of a far-left revolutionary terrorist group that are definitely not Antifa, and also lovers.
Sponsored by Soros.
I mean, fuck me, I guess she must have a stunning personality or something, but whatever. Anyway, not Antifa are busy making the world a better place by blowing up government property that'll have to be repaired using taxpayer dollars and terrorizing innocent civilians whose only crime was being in the wrong place.
Yeah, sounds like a Soros movie.
Are we the baddies?
What lovely people. Things are going just swell until Perfidia runs afoul of Sean Penn, a military officer with a bit of a kink for strong black women, who captures her in the middle of a mission, forcing her to shag her way out of the problem.
Oh no! What happened?
Unfortunately, this creates a whole new problem when she falls pregnant and she's not entirely sure who the father is. I mean, based on how she acts in this film, it could probably be half of Southern California.
Like I'm gonna throw it.
Anyway, skip forward a year and Perfidia decides to run out on Pat and her baby to go back to playing Che Guevara, mostly because she's a selfish arsehole, then
the
gets
baby's
captured
white.
and immediately flips on the rest of not Antifa to save her own arse.
Tiger.
What a lovely person.
Is that a gooch?
With Sean Penn now hunting down and executing his revolutionary comrades, Pat's forced to go into hiding with his daughter and take on the new name of Bob. Skip forward 16 years and Bob's now a paranoid, drug-addicted loser living with his girl-boss-in-waiting daughter, Willa. Not Willow, mind you. Willa. Sure, whatever, fuck it. Meanwhile, Sean Penn is a rising star in the US military, and when he's approached to join a secret society of, well, how can I put this, guys who believe that white people are superior, that creates a bit of a problem for him, because if they find out that he fathered a child with Mother of the Year 17 years earlier, it's not going to end well for him. So basically the movie becomes a kind of cat and mouse game where Bob and Willa are forced to go on the run, while Sean Penn hunts them down with all the force of the US government at his disposal. But will father and daughter make it out the other side? Will Sean Penn finally get his comeuppance? And more importantly, will he ever get a decent fucking haircut? Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely things to praise about this movie, but unfortunately, most of it rests on the superficial aspects of the film. From a directing and cinematography point of view, it's definitely a well put together film. Paul Thomas Anderson isn't exactly a prolific director, but what he does make is generally really good, from quirky, offbeat classics like Boogie Nights and Magnolia, to epic dramas like There Will Be Blood, and One Battle After Another is no exception. The action sequences are well choreographed, there's plenty of strong visuals and a definite creative flair during the tense dramatic moments. Performances are strong across the board, which is pretty much what you'd expect when you've got Benicio del Toro, Leonardo DiCaprio and Sean Penn in your movie. DiCaprio delivers his usual intense, laser-focused performance like he's still chasing that Oscar win with every single movie he does.
Why is she running
He's got excellent
constantly?
chemistry with his daughter Willa, and although their scenes are kind
Like
of
she's
few and
some
far
Rocky
between,
Balboa
they're
type of
probably the
stuff.
most enjoyable aspect of the movie for me. Sean Penn is the standout though as Colonel Lockjaw.
Oh, come on!
Where the fuck did they get these names from? Can't wait to hear more from his superiors General Scurvy and Admiral Diphtheria. The dude looks like he's on the verge of either exploding with absolute rage or bursting into tears in every single scene, and honestly, I can't quite decide if it's a super committed dramatic performance or just goofy overacting. Either way, well, he commands the attention, that's for sure. The problems really lie in the writing, and one of the biggest issues for me is the pacing. At nearly 3 hours long, this movie soon becomes a fucking slog. It's bloated, sluggish,
Slop.
pretentious, and self-indulgent, and after the second hour, I was genuinely starting to get pissed off, wondering if it was ever going to end. The constant commercials for Indian gambling websites didn't exactly help either. Wait, what? The thing is, I'm perfectly fine with longer movies as long as they satisfy two important conditions. There's enough going on to justify the extra runtime, and the characters are likeable enough to keep me invested in them. And well, one battle after another falls short on both counts. For all the strong performances by a veteran cast, the characters they actually play are such unlikable dickheads that I really didn't care much what happened to any of them. Movies like Four Lions proved that it's possible to show people serving a terrible cause and still make them likable and interesting because there's a strong moral compass underneath it all. I never got that sense with this movie, partly because the ending implies that the cycle of terrorism and retribution is just going to continue on with the next generation, and partly because it's too afraid to engage with the idea that maybe extremism on both sides is a bad thing. Apparently the movie underperformed on its opening weekend, and to be honest, I can kind of see why. Its political messaging and moral framework feel like they've been overtaken by real life events in recent months, and if I had to take a guess, I'd say that audiences, especially American audiences, are suffering from a kind of culture war fatigue at this point. They're getting tired of all this shit, and the last thing they need is the elites of Hollywood descending from their ivory towers to tell them how they ought to be feeling about the whole thing. Ultimately, one battle after another fell somewhere between the two extremes I mentioned at the beginning of this video, neither a glorious triumph nor a laughable disaster, but something a bit more mediocre. A slightly long, slightly boring, slightly forgettable, and slightly pretentious film that thinks it's way more profound than it actually is, that wasn't really worth the 3-hour runtime, and that I'll probably never bother to watch or even think about again. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
We got Soros fatigue, that's for sure in this country.